Pronouncing well. Yeah, I'm 11 years old, level 1 student at Hans Online Academy. So, as you know, that um, always we do interviews, and so today we are also going to do an interview with Mark Novak. So, let's start. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, and how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm also good. So, can you please share your introduction?
Oh yes, I've been my name is Mark Novak. I've been basically a mainframe programmer for about 40 years, doing support for various companies and mainly manufacturing, then in banking, also in telecom and healthcare related fields. I've enjoyed my particular roles. I've been in various roles, including an applications developer, a DBA, and computer security. I've also had a side in which I've done a lot of photography and enjoy sharing an awful lot of insights on the internet and everything like that.
Okay. Okay, so thank you so much. So my first question with you will be that what is programming?
Programming is basically the practice of translating algorithms into code. And basically what happens is that we have clients, or we will have a customer, and they will need to do a particular application, and they wanted to do this application on the computer. They would say, we need to automate this particular function for this particular area. We would code it out and create applications for them. It used to be, when I first started, that we would build a lot of these processes from the ground up, and I worked in the mainframe area. Sorry about that. I worked in the mainframe area in which you would help with the design of data, and then you would translate that data into applications. You would codify rules, and you would get everything going. That used to be a big deal. Nowadays, everyone just assumes that that's just part of the process, that people take the coding for granted. But back in the day, it used to be that you had to do a lot of details in order to set up these applications, and it was a lot of work.
Okay, thank you so much. So my next question with you will be that can you please tell me about your life journey?
My life journey. Well, I basically started. When I grew up, I was what was called a military brat. I was the son of an officer in the U.S. military, and we went to various parts of the world. So I had the privilege, being in a military family, of living in Germany, and going to Europe, and living in Panama, and living in all sorts of places around the world. And when I came back to this country, to the United States, it gave me a perspective, because I understood the United States in terms of not only the country, but how other people around the world viewed it. And it also gave me a chance to live in places like Panama, the Panama Canal Zone, and in Germany, and also, various states like California and Michigan. You get a good perspective. And then I went to college. I decided to major in computer programming, because the metric was easy. It wasn't someone's opinion. It was whether or not you could do the role. And that was more or less what I had found, is that the key to being good in my particular pit area is to have good technical skills. And if you have the technical chops, a lot of people will accept an awful lot of other aspects about you, and willing to say, well, I like this person, and he produces good results. So I spent 40 years doing the coding, and being around the world in various positions. People thought that my coding role would be obsolete, but the irony is that there's fewer and fewer mainframe programmers every year. So the occupation over the years has turned out to always be in demand. So I've never looked back, and I'm happy.
Okay, so now my next question with you is that what are your expertise?
My areas of expertise is into the mainframe technologies. I've written programs in COBOL, which is considered an obsolete language, but there's still an awful lot of that about. database technologies like DB2 and Oracle. Also, I've written programs and processes in assembler. I've written a little bit in C and some other languages, in other computer languages, and I've also understood the aspects of computer security. And also, I've been in a DBA role in which I've been on the other side and looked at the underlying database technology and worked with systems programmers. So yes, my skill sets are mainly in the digital domains in the mainframe computer areas.
Okay, thank you so much for telling. So now my next question with you is that what is technology?
Oh, technology. Technology is basically the way that is basically is defined as the technical tools in order to get things done, the how you would accomplish something. Now helicopters have a flying technology, the aspects and the developing about how it flies, you understand the underlying concepts, but technology is taking those underlying applications and understanding them so that you can come up with a solution. So if you're talking about COBOL technology, then you're talking about a COBOL solution. You are talking about you're talking about a framework in which you're going to provide a customer solution, and you are going to use this technology, i.e. COBOL or i.e. computers, in order to solve their particular problem. So it is the underlying application framework of understood science.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing. So now my next question with you is that how did you learn your first programming language?
Oh, I learned my first programming language basically back then when I was growing up. That was in the late '70s. Computers were still something that either rich people had or mostly companies had. So I learned my programming technology, ironically, when I was in college. These days, you can learn a programming language when you're 7 or 8 years old because computers are ubiquitous and there's an awful lot of that tech about. But I learned it in college. So I learned to program in assembly language, C, and COBOL. When I was in college, I also learned other programming languages. I was inspired to go down this path because there was a teacher that was there who talked about how MIS technology, management information system, was the way of the future, that you would always have someone who would need that particular technology. So so I basically learned computer programming when I was in college. Now you can pick up the skills real easily, but mastering it is another matter. It takes a while to get used to being lingua franca and being able to understand that. So you just have to dedicate the hours, and I dedicated the hours into understanding the technology.
Thank you so much. So now my next question with you is that what was your first big project?
My first big project was in an application for a helicopter company in which they were managing the warranty process for a helicopter. Helicopters back then would be sold with a 1,000 or 2,000 hours flight warranty, in which certain parts had a certain life. And what would happen is that customers, if a part wore out within that particular period, customers could um, could have the helicopters worked on in warranty. And there was an awful lot of aspects because the system would determine exactly how much wear and tear on the part was, track the parts. If there were high value parts, keep track of them, and it would store all this information on databases using what was called IMS technology. And then later we transferred a lot of that technology to DB2. So it was on the mainframe, and it was a lot of coding to make sure that when we inputted the information, that all the checks were done. Basically, I wrote a program that literally did the work of 50 people, checking the parts and doing an awful lot of cost savings. That was in the mid '80s.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So now my next question with you is that which programming language do you find most powerful and why?
Well, the irony is that it would all depends on how you define power. Now within the more modern technologies like Java, there's an awful lot of possibility for you to use a lot of code that is already there that allows you to build processes. So modern technology, in terms of being able to do a lot of functionality in a few steps, is more powerful. But I like the technologies like assembler and COBOL, in which they're more versatile. What happens with Java is that it's an interpreted code. So if you run something in Java, there's a lot of overhead. But if you write something in COBOL, or if you write something in assembler, it's going to be compiled code. So you can run processes much faster with an awful lot less CPU resource. So in terms of the results of a COBOL program, you end up with a faster, more efficient, cost effective solution. Whereas with Java can do the same things, but it's going to require 10 times the resource, and there's going to be an awful lot of hidden costs. Of course, a lot of customers are willing to pay for that hidden cost. But the irony is that there are a lot of Java programs that will send what they call containers to COBOL programs or assembly programs that will do the heavy lifting behind the scenes, but the Java program gets all the credit for the work, even though it's not really doing that much processing. Java can be considered more powerful in terms of how fast you can get results, but COBOL is more powerful in that it does most of the processing in a lot of large applications like banks and insurance companies.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us. So now my next question with you will be that how do you choose the right technology for a project?
Well, that's one of the tricky things that's happened is that today, it used to be that there was an awful lot of that you would choose the technology based on what was most efficient and what was most cost effective. But these days, you'll choose the technology by the base of people who have that technology. So either though Java or C++ or C sharp is less efficient, there are an awful lot more people that have that technology. So what they're trying to do is that they're choosing that technology because they have a base of expertise that can use that technology. So no matter how good the technology is, if you don't have the people who can support it, then it's not going to be a good option. It's like using some ancient technology no one understands. It might be the best solution, but it's not the best choice given the number of people who can master that and be able to replace those people or get other people to help solve the problem or understand it.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing with us. So now my next question with you is that which software or tools do you use daily?
The software and the tools that I use daily, since I'm in a database analyst role, is I'm doing an awful lot of utilities, maintaining databases, looking at particular databases. I'm also using software technology that allows us to transfer files to other companies. In terms of the technology and the tools that I have, and on the application side, an awful lot of that code is already written. So it's a matter of using mainframe technology in order to look at the files and in order to look at the code that is behind that and see what the solution is. So I spent a lot of my time looking at green screens. Obviously, I have an email environment. We have a Gmail environment at the company in which we can look at emails, and we also have software and technology that allows us to look at the queues and the files on the other side of the system to make sure everything is done. But I basically am using a lot of what is referred to as mainframe technology in an old-fashioned TSO environment, using a remote connection because I spend a lot of time working from home.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. So now my next question with you will be that how do you keep your coding skills updated?
You keep the coding skills updated by staying up with the industry. Now, the good thing is that since I've been part of the industry for 40 years, I've had a chance to use various skill sets and looking at COBOL code and looking at DB2 code, looking at IMS technology on a daily basis, so I can keep my skills sharp. But I also will go out and there's a lot of publications, there's a lot of forums in which I can go out in which if there's an exotic question, I can ask those particular questions in a forum and people will give me answers pretty readily. And there's an awful lot of manuals that they are on there, but I also will keep up with the latest technologies so I can understand how Java and how the internet is changing and how that would affect mainframe technology, in that they are messaging, in that they are looking to use other tools to try to substitute for some of the code I have, but it's going to take years and years and years for them to redevelop that. So keeping up, staying in the industry is the key, and it's pretty rare for someone to manage to maintain in the industry for 40 years, but I have.
Thank you so much for sharing. And now my next question with you will be that what's the most challenging project you did work on.
Okay, the most current project that I've worked on is basically it's basically the databases for a telecommunications forum. That there are an awful lot of mainframes. The mainframes are communicating with each other, transferring files, and they have a shared environment. So latest technologies I've been working on are within telecom. I can't name the particular company, but basically it keeps track of the processes, keeps track of all of the switches and the connections in a database environment, and we're constantly monitoring that environment, keeping it clean, making sure that there's enough storage space for the changeovers and all that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. So now my next question with you will be that have you ever worked on AI or machine learning projects?
We have work with AI to an extent. The problem that they've been having with the AI is that it requires people who understand the tool in order to be able to determine whether or not the outputs are useful. We have been running some tests saying generate code in this language which can do this, and this, and we've had the AI. It can generate beautiful code within seconds. The problem that you have is that then you have to go through that code and you have to verify whether or not that code's going to do what you need it to do. And the weird thing is that within the AI environment, it can generate the code that gets to 95% of the answer. But that last 5% takes more time to verify than it would to just write the code from scratch. So it's almost like you have developed a perfect car, but the problem is that one, it is at 45.5 kilometers per hour. It doesn't work quite usefully, and maybe you're not going to be at that speed or stay at that speed, but there's a problem at that speed that makes no sense. And that's what happens with this code is that there are some very specific problems that makes no sense that you have to be able to debug. So debugging AI code at this point takes about as much time as it takes more time than it would to just write the code from scratch. And that's been true for years. Maybe it won't be true in the future, but right now it is true. So it's not necessarily rigorous enough at a corporate level to provide a solution. It can provide a good solution for simple applications, but complex applications where there's multiple companies and areas and regions, it still has some limitations.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So now my next question with you will be that yeah, so now my next question with you will be that what's your favorite type of project at work? Yeah, my next question is that what's your favorite type of project to work on?
My favorite type of project to work on work-wise would be to be at the architect level developing a process. I've only gotten to do that a few times in which you are looking at a system that at a solution that hasn't been used yet, and you're trying to integrate it with current technology, and you're trying to also have it modern technology. So my favorite type of project would be something that would be versatile, that I could work with, in which I could design something from the ground up, come up with a solution for customers, and let some other people code some of the details, test things out, and then work with the customer in which there are specific objectives and plans that they would have.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now my next question with you is that do you think AI will replace programmers?
AI is going to do an awful lot of things for an awful lot of people. Now, the weird thing is that there's a lot of people who are in highly technical roles who think that their job is safe from AI, and that's not the case, because what they are doing is not all that complex at a logic level. It may look a little bit obscure. And then there are certain roles in which there's going to be people who need to be able to verify those things and prove that the AI is working, and those roles are still going to be there. And that's one of the roles that I have. I'm the individual who looks and verifies whether or not that technology is working. We've already had people trying AI roles and trying AI tools, but AI will replace a lot of people in technical roles. It will replace a lot of people in front end processing, but it's going to be longer term for it to replace anyone in back end processing.
Okay, really love that, and thank you so much. So now my next question with you is that how important is cybersecurity in modern programming?
Oh, cybersecurity is an ongoing role. I worked at a bank in which I was in cybersecurity, in which we had a lot of things that were in which there were a lot of challenges, and there was an awful lot of people, and they were doing roles, and they were checking, making sure there were no breaches, making sure that there weren't issues. Every day when I log on, there are particular applications that I can log on for only a particular amount of time because of security issues. And in cybersecurity, you have issues in which even if someone knows the password, that there's another application that you have to independently verify that you're there. Cybersecurity, we're constantly getting attacks or constantly getting attempts to breach a particular process. So it's a cat and mouse game. There's no such thing as a perfect firewall, but there's an awful lot. But cybersecurity is very important. But it was equally important for people to be conscious of what is happening, because no matter how good the technology is, the weakest link is the people. And so you have to be trained and forever looking for phishing and various threats. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. So now my next question with you, will be that, what advice do you have for beginners and beginners in programming?
Well, okay, for beginners in programming, that is that you're going to have to is that you want to learn the new technologies and understand the technologies, but you might want to also master some older programming languages. The reason being is that the older programming languages like COBOL and C and C++, they will give you an understanding of the underlying technologies, particularly assembler, in which you can understand computers at a very root level, and that would help you no matter what programming processes that you are using. So when you're using a particular programming process, that you would end up with that understanding, which will help you within your programming processes understand things. So the key is that if you're learning computer programming, you want to understand the underlying computer logic at a fundamental level, even if you don't know it. Even if you don't need to know it, because that gives you an appreciation for what the processes are doing and will help you in your coding efforts.
Okay, so thank you so much. So now my next question with you is that, um, how do you stay motivated while coding for long hours?
Oh, you basically it is a matter of pacing yourself. What happens is that you'll start in something, and the best way to do that is that if you're going to be in a heads down coding process, that you try to get into that mode within about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you will pace yourself. You take a break about once every 15 to 30 minutes and get away from the monitor, because what happens is that doing that process can tire you out a little. You take short breaks every 15 to 30 minutes. You refresh yourself. The short break might be 5 or 10 minutes. Don't be don't don't force yourself to be a superstar and try to focus on something for 18 hours. That a lot of times in a given day you're going to get about 6 hours worth of good work out of you, and you want to make sure that effective 6 hours of good work is as productive as possible. If you work too much, then what happens is you slow down. So you pace yourself, you start on it immediately, you take breaks, you refresh yourself, and then after about 8 to 10 hours, you're probably going to be as effective and gotten as much done for that particular day. So don't be afraid to walk away and rest. You might think that you're behind, but in coding, it is a burst activity in which you just need to you have a certain pace, and there's only so much code you can do in a particular day, and you'll become more effective over time in the long run doing that, rather than trying to spend 18 hours and burning yourself out and exhausting you and having nothing else to do. Your brain just it's not sustainable to do that type of output or work if you're not willing to pace yourself and being in a mode in which you're working 8 to 10 hours a day, possibly with breaks.
Thank you so much for sharing. So now, can you give an feedback?
Oh yeah, I think getting the feedback of basically it's an enjoyable role, and it was fun being here to be able to share what I've learned and what I've been throughout the years. Yes.
Thank you so much. So now we will see you in our next interview. Allah Hafiz, everyone.